I want to talk about the red Gizmo Fuzz and show you how I build it so you can build your own killer fuzz pedal. The red Gizmo takes the same idea that we used in the green Gizmo pickup revoicer, but applies it to a really touch sensitive fuzz circuit, essentially giving you 12 different fuzz voicings in one pedal. It really blurs the lines between fuzz, distortion and overdrive. The reason why this is one of my favorite fuzz pedals is because of how it interacts with your guitar. So when you play directly into it, your controls on your guitar essentially become part of the fuzz pedal circuit, and it's a really amazing experience jamming through a pedal that is designed like this. Okay, let's do a quick demo before cracking into the details. Now, if you're enjoying any of these videos I make, please hit the like button because it lets me know what sort of videos you'd like me to create in the future. Right, now let's get into this pedal. So the red Gizmo is essentially 12 different sort of fuzz voicings in one pedal. And it is extremely simple to use. You've just got one rotary switch here that you click around to your 12 different selections. So if I play here, you can hear. But the coolest thing about this pedal is it gives you access to some of the best overdrive sounds using that fuzz engine. Let me show you what I mean. So we're plugged into it now. This is the fuzz tone that we've got. Super fuzzy, right? But if I just roll, it is insanely touch sensitive. Really, really, really sweet overdrive sound. Love the sound of that. So if we start down here, down in this range here, you notice it's kind of quite scratchy and tight. Almost like just a distortion, really. When you roll down, sort of as we go up, it gets woollier. Really love those rolled back sounds, and it's almost my favorite. Well, I'd have to say it's my favorite part of this pedal, is being able to play with my controls and get different sound. That was just some tone control roll off there, but it's really, really sensitive to what's going in the front end as long as you plug directly in. And around here, you've got like the ultra woolly. Same thing, roll back, and you've just got this really nice fat sort of overdrive sound. Yeah, it's really inspiring to play through, and just an awesome pedal. The fact that you've only got, well, you've really got more than one control, because you've got all your guitar controls and your pickup selections and stuff. They really affect the sound a lot. But I like that I can go from like a cruising into like fire breathing. Just by using my guitar's controls. The thing about this is that it's always sort of pushing a little bit. So if my amp is always on the edge of breakup, so you're always pushing your amp's front end just a touch. So that's the lowest setting there. That is the most mild setting there, but brightest. Okay, so let's get into it. So the engine of this pedal is based on the same circuit used by loads of boutique effects pedal manufacturers, and it's because of how great it sounds, but also how versatile it is as a circuit, and that is the vintage 1970s electro distortion. Now, what I have done with the red Gizmo is come up with a version that I feel is pretty unique. The pedal is very simple to use, but also crazily versatile, which fits what I need perfectly. Now, Plus members, the complete red Gizmo schematic is free for a limited time. There's a link in the description. Also, the schematic is available in my website shop if you're interested. Now, this just helps fund these types of videos. So for anyone who has bought a schematic, thank you so much for your support. I love making these videos, and I just can't do it without the support of you good people. So thank you so much. Okay, so first let's draw an original Electra distortion. Okay, so we've got... This is basically the Electra in its most basic form, and this is from a very early schematic that I have got. So that on the schematic, this is a 4.7K. This is a 3.3 meg. This is 100 nanofarad. This one is a 470 ohm. And this one is 100 nanofarad as well, I think. Yep, 100 nanofarad. And these diodes here are both germanium. So this is the basic schematic, and it is just the best for modifying. It looks super basic, and it doesn't look like there's a lot you can do there. But let's go through some of the changes made with this red Gizmo. Now, obviously, I'm saving some of these for the Plus members and the people that purchase that schematic. I'm going to show you the main sort of bits that are going to really help you design your own fuzz, distortion, or overdrive using the same schematic. This pedal is readily available all over the show as a kit that you can just buy and build yourself. Plus, loads of manufacturers make pedals based on this circuit, so if you know that your pedal is based on this, you can pretty much get in there and just sort of modify it to how you see fit. Okay, so firstly, what I have done right at the input stage, so we'll put an input down there. What I have done is I've added a resistor and then a little tiny capacitor to ground. So what I've done is I've put a 1K resistor in here, 1K, and this is a 100 nanofarad, 100 picofarad. Nanofarad would be crazy. When you first look at it, you think, oh, this is just forming a little RF filter at the start, which is always sort of good practice to help get noise out of your pedal, and it works really, really well. But the thing with this circuit, it is so sensitive to what is coming in that front end. This 1K resistor actually ups the level of sensitivity of this fuzz circuit by a decent amount. The higher value you use here, the more sensitive it will be, but I found higher values than 1K just didn't give me the right amount of sensitivity. It was either way too sensitive and also kind of stifled the sound of the actual pedal as well, the fuzz sound and how it felt, because I still want to get that really good compression going. I do want the front end of this transistor to still be hit fairly hard. Okay, so that is the first change. Second change, actually we'll do that bit in a second. Okay, so I changed the gain structure a little bit around here just to get, let me just use this. This is old school, using a eraser. I did a couple of changes just to get the gain structure I liked. I changed this to 47K, that's pretty common. That ups the gain massively of this transistor, by the way. Then I didn't need quite as big feedback resistor here, so I used a 2.2 meg. I like writing it like this, 2M2. And for this emitter resistor, the emitter resistor, I used a 680 ohm. Okay, now the other thing I did is I bypassed this with a large capacitor, and that gave me the sound I'm after. I wanted it to be like a full range, so it's boosting all the frequencies. I played a little bit around with this emitter resistor, and it didn't really give. I found 680R was sort of the sweet spot. It seems to be what most manufacturers use anyway with their versions of this. 47K and a 680R seems to be pretty common. This gets changed around a little bit, but the thing is, you can experiment quite freely with all these different values and you can get some really amazing results. Now the transistor, a 2N3904 seems to be the most common value. I picked a lot higher gain value, one that I really like, but any sort of NPN you can experiment with. I mean, it does make a difference. Not as big as you'd think, but it definitely makes a difference to how it feels and how everything compresses. Now output, for me, I'm gonna get rid of this guy. I just changed it to a 22 nanofarad. The output capacitor it's important, but it's not gonna really change how this feels. It's gonna change everything beyond that point. I suppose it's gonna change how it clips these diodes here, but it's not as much of a big deal as the front end side, which we'll get to in a second. Now these diodes originally were germanium. I didn't like the sound of the germanium ones. For me personally, they were really smooth and you just lose quite a lot of volume. I like to have a little bit more texture in there. There's a couple of really awesome ones that I loved the sound of in this that I used in the red Gizmo, but that's another area you can massively experiment with. Silicon diodes, you can use germanium, you can use a combination, extra diodes in series to up that like clipping threshold, all those good things that you usually do. Next, I have got a preset volume at the end here. So I've got a couple of resistors in this configuration, and then it goes out. Now, you don't need to do it this way. I found a really nice sweet spot that worked really well through all 12. I just wanted to push, not too much, but you know, enough to really start cooking the front end of an amp without it being insanely loud. You could put a volume control there, so let's just pretend this doesn't exist, right? I'm gonna go up. You could have like a tone controller. This would be kind of cool. You could go like this, and that could be grounded. That could be 100K audio, and you could put like a little treble bleed thing in there if you wanted, like I don't know, like 470 picofarad. If this was a 10K linear pot, I like this type of tone control, and that would probably be 22 nanofarad, would probably sound really good. This tone control is cool because as you alter it, it doesn't change the volume, where a lot of them, they sort of interact, where this one doesn't. That would actually be quite a cool little arrangement on the end. But yeah, I definitely did not want that. I want it to be as simple as possible, set and tweaked perfectly to what I would always normally use, because once I find the sweet spot on something, I don't really alter it. One thing I also did was do this. Speaking of it being too sharp. Now this, 47 picofarad, this little capacitor here is really important. It takes out loads of that hiss. It's kind of like the perfect value for the circuit, but it also means, for me, I don't really feel I need to have a tone control in there. It just takes just the right amount of edge off, because I still want a decent amount of edge, especially when I'm pushing an amp that's on the edge of breakup, and that's how I use all my effects. I'm always pushing an amp on the edge of breakup because I love the sound, that blended sort of sound. That did that perfectly for me. Plus it took out some of that extra hiss you get from really pushing a transistor hard like this. The coolest thing is this here. Now this is, some of you guys that have built pedals are like gonna go, well, that is just so basic. But what I put in here, I can't even draw it because it's too big. It's gonna put a big square in there. Okay, I put it's a rotary 12 pole single throw. And I've got 12 capacitors on a rotary switch, exactly like we did with that green Gizmo. And they're in series this time, not in parallel. So the signal's running through them, forming a high pass filter. So on the lower end, I'm using a smaller value capacitor and slowly dialing it up to a larger value. Now you might think, well, that's not such a big deal. All you're doing is slowly allowing low end to get into the circuit. But it doesn't work exactly like that. It not only changes how much output, the gain structure of this, but it changes the clipping texture and the clipping threshold as well. So it really alters the whole sound and feel of this pedal by changing that one part. And that is the crucial part to this whole thing. And when you look at a lot of different schematics and a lot of different effects pedals based on this design out there, that is what they're changing most of the time. Pretty much all this other stuff does make a difference, but this is the big thing that makes a difference. And there are some pedals where, like made by the same manufacturer, where the only difference is this. There's just the same pedal, and they've brought out 5 pedals where they just changed the value of this capacitor, and it sounds remarkably different from using a lower value. You could go right down to maybe 470 picofarad, all the way up to maybe 470 nanofarad. I think you'd get the most value out of. Once you sort of get to 470 nanofarad, I don't think you would get much more response. But definitely as you get up to those higher values, it gets way more squishy, and it does that kind of cool Velcro-y fuzz thing. In those middle to lower values, It's definitely feels more distortion-y, like a fuzzy sort of distortion overdrive. I definitely like those sort of mid values a lot more. But if you were building this, say if you were building this for yourself, you could put 100 nanofarad, and that's getting up to the, to me, up to the higher values. I would try something like a 10 nanofarad. That's kind of getting in that middle of the road there. Somewhere around there would sound quite nice and give you, you know, kind of the best of everything. That took me ages to work out the exact steps that would sound really nice with this particular circuit, with these particular diodes that are used and the transistor that I used, because once I changed one of these parts, it didn't quite sound or feel the same to me. And I'm very particular about what I expect from an effects pedal. Once you've built loads and loads of these, you start to get to a point where you know what you want in your head before you actually start building it. Having a whole bunch of capacitors on a rotary switch there gives you loads of options, especially when you start to mix that with your guitar's controls, because if your guitar's connected directly and like not going through another pedal, your volume control and your tone control are now actually completely part of this fuzz pedal, and it is so sensitive and such an incredible experience when you start playing with your guitar's controls and actually feeling how much this pedal responds to that. It's such a great feeling, and it just gives, in my opinion, one of the most stellar overdrives that money can buy. Once your amp is sort of on the edge of breakup, you've got everything right, and you're punching it with this really awesome circuit and then rolling off a little bit of that volume. It is just something that you can sit there and play for hours and hours and hours. Anyway, that is a whole bunch of different design aspects you can play with, and that's the cool thing about this is it's such a versatile circuit. Obviously, if you want a copy of the actual one, I do have one on our website. There's some links in the description, but you do not need that to build a kick-ass, awesome sounding fuzz pedal distortion overdrive yourself. You can just use this schematic. There's a whole bunch of cool ideas there, and just play around and experiment, because you will learn so much. Okay, so really quickly, I just want to talk about how I build pedals. Now, I've gone through a lot of different stages in my pedal building career so far, but the way I really love to build is by using a matrix board, and I always wood top the board. So I've got to really think about how it looks on the inside. Now, this has got a piece of 50,000-year-old swamp coldie on the top. I mean, that's pretty extreme. It's just because I have offcuts of wood all the time, and I decided to use this piece for this particular board. But a matrix board is sometimes called perf board. It's just a whole bunch of little holes through a piece of board, and it's often seen as a beginner step to getting into pedal boarding. Like the first thing you get into is doing perf board or matrix board, and then strip board and so on. But I feel like it is the ultimate way to build, because you can push it to a whole nother level than what you end up doing when you first start out. When you first start out, you're just shoving the wires through and basically soldering it together, and it can look pretty rough. But once you sort of get quite good at it, you can make things insanely reliable. Plus, it gives you ultimate freedom. You can build anything you want, whenever you want, at any time you want. You don't have to buy a PCB and then, you know, you're sort of trapped into this little circuitry cage of what you can do. With matrix board, you can do anything that you can think of. I built a Univibe on matrix board. I built a 2-channel amplifier with delay, distortion on it. It had reverb in there on both channels, purely independently. It was a completely crazy contraption I used when I was teaching guitar. But I built that using matrix board, and I couldn't have built that using PCBs. It would have been just so much design work to get that to work. All I had to do was buy some matrix board. When you buy it, one second. Okay, without the wood veneer, matrix board kind of looks like this. And this is quite nice quality stuff. I got this from Furlick, I think. Furlick? I'm pretty sure that's what they're called. This is really good board. I've used this for years. It cuts really nice, and it just works really well. All the pedals have different wood veneers. Just whatever I've got in hand, I always wood veneer the actual boards. I tend to wood veneer the back of the pots as well. I'm kind of weird like that. But that's how I love building. It's the style I've gravitated towards, and it just absolutely fits what I like to see in a pedal. Anyway, so let's just show you the inside of the pedal now with it completed. Okay, this one is all done now and ready to get shipped out. Now, this is how I like to do the internals of my pedals. I like a fairly neat lead dress. Obviously, we've got the wood board in there on standoffs, but I've used a deeper enclosure for the red Gizmo, so I have room for these switchcraft jacks up here. I just needed a little bit of extra space because the rotary switch here with all the capacitors on there takes up quite a bit of room. Now, the thing about building in this way, building using matrix board and wiring it in this way, not using PCBs, there is a heck of a lot more work involved and a heck of a lot more time in building them in this style, especially if you want them to look a certain way, you want it to look nice, and you want it to be really reliable, because guys using these out there, a lot of them are gigging 3 nights a week, and you want to build something that's going to really last and be road ready and rugged, but still kind of look beautiful on the inside. I mean, I really love stuff having a certain way that it looks internally. I would love to know if any of you guys end up designing a fuzz or designing your own effects pedal. I mean, that's kind of like what I would love to see with this channel, people being able to do things for themselves and sort of get inspired by this and hopefully carry on to start building your own effects pedals. It's one of those things that you might not think you'll be able to do until you start getting into it, and once you get the bug, it's really, really hard to sort of stop. Anyway guys, let me know down in the comments if you have a go at building one of these, and I'll catch you in the next video.